Hello, I'm Lyle DeVries, a consultant assisting the South Dakota Department of Transportation, or SDDOT, with the Black Hills Context Sensitive Corridors Study. For this portion of the meeting, we turn our attention to the US 85 corridor from the Wyoming state line to the junction with US Highway 14A at Cheyenne Crossing. This corridor is just over 16 miles from end to end and is identified as Corridor 3 within the Black Hills Context Sensitive Corridors study. This presentation covers the unique transportation needs and the improvement concepts proposed for the corridor and will provide an opportunity for you to explore some of the more critical focus areas. At this end of this presentation, you will be given instructions on how to review improvement concepts in more detail and provide your comments. This corridor has been identified as a commuter commercial corridor, along which travel efficiency is of primary importance. Improvements identified to help the roadway better meet its primary function include adding lane and shoulder width, correcting tight horizontal curves to improve safety and efficiency, adding pullouts along the roadway to provide refuge, and enhancing parking areas along the corridor. Actions proposed in this phase of the study reflects needs identified in earlier stages through work with SDDOT staff, public meetings, and discussions with agencies who have a vested interest in the success of the US 85 corridor. In phase one of the study, corridors were characterized based on their current and desired function in the regional highway network. The US 85 corridor is shown here. This corridor is an official National Highway System route and was identified as a commercial commuter corridor in that its desired primary functions are to support regional freight traffic and connect people with jobs and activities in nearby communities. Key physical and operating characteristics of a commuter commercial corridor are higher travel speeds, wider lanes and shoulders to accommodate larger vehicles, and well-designed highway accesses to minimize turning conflicts. Currently, travel efficiency along US 85 is limited by a narrow roadway surface and tight curves. A review of crash history with areas of elevated crash experience highlighted in orange here indicates several areas of elevated concern, particularly within the western portion of the corridor. This corridor contains a rich context of scenic views and environmental resources. Accordingly, improvements to its transportation functions are balanced to complement the unique character of the roadway. To ensure a successful balance, each of the improvement types have been reviewed by SDDOT environmental staff, as well as representatives from the Game, Fish, and Parks Department and the U.S. Forest Service to ensure adjacent resource impacts are appropriately considered. Once you have viewed the improvement concepts, our team is eager to hear your input on how well the improvements do complement the context of the highway. Strategies developed by the team to help Corridor 3 better fulfill its purpose while complementing the context include several improvement types. Shown here are current and proposed typical sections. The current cross-section for the roadway reflects a lane width of 11 feet and minimal or no shoulders. The proposed section for the corridor includes 12-foot travel lanes and paved or a combination of paved and gravel shoulders of 6 feet on both sides of the roadway. To safely support higher desired speed requires looking outside the lane and shoulder area as well to remove obstacles such as trees to establish a clear zone of about 30 feet on either side of the road. These individual design elements combine to reflect a corridor section approximately 10 to 14 feet wider than the current. Additionally, from a design perspective, there are currently approximately 20 curves along the corridor with speed advisory signs warning drivers to slow down for the curve. A goal for this corridor is to minimize the number of speed advisory signed curves. Increasing the radius of these curves or flattening the curve, as shown here with the red alignment, greatly improves the potential to maintain the desired speed and travel time. Increasing a curve radius, however, requires shifting off the current alignment, which results in impacts to adjacent areas. The approximate grading impact area is shaded in gray on this graphic, and roads and driveways, shown in red and circled, will need to be reconnected to the realigned US 85. Another need is to create more pullout opportunities along the corridor, as depicted here, shown with the A symbol. Such pullouts provide a refuge for drivers needing a short pause and allow faster moving traffic to progress more safely and efficiently. The need for pullouts has been incorporated into the corridor concept. Improvements are focused on reducing crashes. The west end of the corridor has several segments that in the last 5 years have experienced higher crash rates. Additional design effort was applied to these areas to address crashes, as well as support the needs of travel time reduction and convenience for freight and commuter traffic. Widening travel lanes, adjusting roadway curvature, adding shoulders, and creating an appropriate clear zone free of obstacles will support crash reduction. Across the 16 miles, there are essentially 3 distinct shifts in terrain severity that influence the definition of potential corridor improvements. Starting here on the west end of the corridor, relative to other portions, areas adjacent to the roadway are more open, which better accommodates flattening curves to support higher design speed. Within this portion of the corridor, improvements assumed a posted speed of 60 miles per hour, which is consistent with state design guidelines for US routes. This example is a curve realignment near mile reference marker 1. At about the 6-mile point in the corridor, US 85 enters more rugged terrain, which restricts the ability to flatten many of the curves to accommodate the 60 mile per hour posted speed. Thus, the posted speed objective through this area begins to shift down to 40 miles per hour, moving from west to east. The lower proposed operating speed allows shorter radius curves before needing to post a speed advisory sign, and the shorter radius curves reduce the area of potential impact of the improvements. Pullouts and parking area enhancements are also identified here. At the mile 12 point, the number of adjacent recreational uses, such as picnic areas, increases, which results in more turning traffic. The roadside terrain also becomes increasingly constrained. To safely support access to and from these areas and complement the context, the assumed operating speed in this portion was kept at the 40 mile per hour level. Maintaining this level also brings the US 85 vehicle speeds better in conformity with speeds on US 14A, north of the junction at Cheyenne Crossing, and east. An initial environmental resource review has been completed to understand current environmental resources that could be impacted by the proposed improvements and set the stage for future environmental analyses and clearance processes. Resources present along the corridor include wetlands, potential historic structures, and national forest and tribal lands. Visual resources are present throughout the corridor with scenic views that are treasured and appreciated by visitors and travelers. In summary, improvements to Corridor 3 are directed toward reducing crashes and increasing travel speeds for regional freight and passenger vehicle traffic. The corridor concept includes widening of the roadway to accommodate increased travel lane and shoulder width, realignment of some horizontal curves, particularly within the western portion of the corridor to increase posted speeds, and provisions of pullouts to accommodate faster moving traffic and provide a refuge for drivers in need of a break. A red-green rating system is provided and shown on this slide to allow for simple review of the performance of corridor improvements. Red circles indicate greater impacts or costs and less consistency with the design guidelines and overall corridor vision. Green circles are generally positive, denoting lower costs and impacts and higher design and vision consistency. The identified vision for Corridor 3, described here on this slide, is to support mobility and safety for commercial and commuter travel. A corridor reconstruction effort is needed to increase lane and shoulder widths and address horizontal curvature. This vision is best fulfilled within the west and middle portions, but the constrained east portion limits the ability to provide higher travel speeds. The proposed improvements would be successful at improving consistency with STDOT design guidelines. Environmental and property impacts are greater in the west and middle sections where more curve realignment is identified. The proposed improvements are of a relatively higher cost per mile as shown here, particularly within the west portion due to pavement widening and curve corrections. Thank you for viewing this presentation. To learn more about the Corridor 3 improvements, click the Click Here to Review and Comment button located below this video. This will take you to the segment map within Corridor 3, where you can click on particular areas to view proposed improvement concepts. Once you reach the detailed information, please click on the dashed boxes to review and provide feedback. We look forward to hearing from you. Thank you for taking the time to review and provide your input.